Welcome to the show. Ivy Nation Sports Talk up, rolling on a Monday. Vince D'Addario is right there. Sean Stiers right here. Hope you're having a good day. We got, of course, some bad news today, and we're going to get to that here in just a minute. Vince has already done one show today. He is back officially from vacation. I guess officially you were back from vacation on Friday. You and Brian did a show on Friday, didn't you?
We did do a show on Friday because I got back late on Thursday, and so we did a mailbag on Friday. And, you know, of course, our show here, we have moved away from the Friday shows because we are officially in season now.
Right.
And I had completely forgotten about that. And so I was totally anticipating doing another
Two shows
show
on Friday.
Yes, totally anticipating doing another show on Friday, but luckily I did not have to do that. So that was fantastic.
I mean, it'll only be what, like 3 more weeks or something like that. We'll basically do our countdown to kickoff. We'll start into that, and that kind of takes the place of the Friday shows. So
yes, because we record that and then we put it out, and you know, people can consume at their leisure for the countdown show and all of that. And yeah, so that'll be available to everybody Friday nights, and they'll be ready to rock and roll.
Some quick bookkeeping. Andre asking if we're doing we in, we out this week. The plan is yes, unless we get more breaking news and something happens on Thursday. The plan is for a Thursday we in, we out. I was toying with doing it tomorrow, but because of the Charles Jagusah news today, we're actually supposed to be able to talk with Joe Rudolph tomorrow. So assuming that goes through, we will have Joe Rudolph reaction to this news today, and you know, explanations maybe for, and we're going to get to see some practice and that kind of thing in the morning. So we'll definitely be talking about that on tomorrow's show, but look for some Joe Rudolph reaction again, assuming we still have that, you know, coming up after Tuesday's practice. And then Thursday, we in, we out. I was toying with, and I'm still toying with maybe moving we in, we out to Tuesday. In, you know, like if we're still talking about, do we keep it around once the season starts? Is it just an off-season thing? You know, as we get into the season, things obviously change. So we're talking about a lot of different things right now.
Hey, we got
no definite answers.
We got to challenge everything. You know,
that's right.
We're just like Notre Dame football. We challenge everything.
Embrace hard, right?
That's right. That's right. We got to win the interval. That's what we're going to try to do as we move forward here.
Yes.
So, yes.
So Bubs is already coming in hot. This is a disaster, boy. He says. Were people as level-headed in the show earlier today?
I purposely turned off the chat because it started to go downhill.
Oh, boy.
And I get sucked into the chat, and I stop paying attention to what's actually being said on the show.
Yeah.
And so I just shut the chat off, and I was focused on what we were talking about.
A
lot of action. Let's put it that way. There was a lot of action in the show today. You know, we had lots and lots of viewers because it was very fresh today at 1:00, because it literally broke at the stroke of 1:00, and we usually start the show about 1:05. And so that was obviously the topic of conversation when we first started. So, you know, look, it's not good news, obviously. I mean, there's nothing good about it.
I guess we should, you know, just to sort of, for anyone who wasn't listening or, you know, who's punching this show up right now, to make sure that we talk about the actual information that happened for anyone maybe who didn't know coming into the show. Charles Jagusah, who was slated to be Notre Dame's left tackle this season, Notre Dame announced this afternoon that he had a shoulder/pectoral injury of the right side, and he is going to miss the entire season. Marty Auer, defensive guy, reserve, you know, still a walk-on. I would say one of the more important walk-ons potentially because of the depth in the secondary and, you know, just for the things that he does at practice. So that's not good news either. But obviously, he tore his ACL. But starting left tackle, very important when you're already talking about replacing a top 5 NFL draft pick on that side of the line, as well as the tackle on the other side. So what do you think, Vince? Like how dire is this as of right now, Monday afternoon, when the news is still relatively fresh?
I mean, it's not great news, obviously. This is not good news. This was a spot on the offensive line that was already spoken for. There was no competition there. It's going to be Charles Jagusah. It's going to be his spot, right? And so that's not good. But you can be upset about it, but then you got to get back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, what's the solution, right? You know, right now they have depending on how you look at it, they got a competition over at right tackle between two tackles, and who's going to win that spot? I think the obvious thing is you take one of those guys, you move them over to the left side. Now you've got your two tackles. I mean, that's the most obvious solution. Now, there's some other solutions that you could obviously look at. You know, you've got Gerby Lambert, who came in, who's a true freshman. You've got Anthony Knapp, who's sitting, you know, in the backup role at left tackle right now. But
it's looked pretty solid so far from what we've been able to see.
And here's the thing that you also have to remember, though. Just because you're sitting as the second left tackle on the depth chart does not mean you're the next man in. I mean, that needs to be understood. Because right now, Anthony Knapp,
because there's got to be a two deep. It just, you know, and we've seen this
on paper.
We've seen this before where the two deep says one thing, but if someone gets hurt in an actual game,
correct,
that doesn't necessarily mean he's the second best option for that spot. You just got to have someone to plug into the actual two deep, basically.
Correct. So I want to make
someone's got to get the majority, especially when it's reserved. All bets are off now. Now it's who's the best guy for the job.
Absolutely.
Basically. Who's the best fit for the right side? Who's the best fit for the left side? Is Emil Wagner the best fit for the left side just because he had moved to the top on the right side? I know he's played both sides before. Is Tosh Baker potentially, the answer on the right side? Or where does, Sullivan, Absher, and Gerby Lambert, you mentioned that name, and Anthony Knapp as well. Where do they all fit into the picture?
Yeah, I mean, look, this occurred like the second day of being in full pads, basically, or the first day of being in full pads, excuse me, because the day we were there, they were just in shells. And so they weren't even in full pads at the time. So it's very early on in fall camp. So we are in season, quote unquote, right? If this is going to happen in season, this is the best time for it to happen because you literally have a month to try to figure out who this guy is going to be. Now you want to figure it out sooner than that so that you can get reps and you can get all of the, the communication and everything down, but you've got some time to try out a few different guys and see kind of what situation is going to be the best. Is it going to be Emil Wagner? Emil Wagner's a little bit more athletic. He's a little bit longer, obviously, than Tosh Baker. It's one of the reasons he was kind of in the pole position for the right tackle spot. Is he more comfortable on the right side? So then you move Tosh over to the left side. Look, Emil Wagner has never played on the left side while at Notre Dame. Tosh Baker has, right? And so is that the easier move to move Tosh over to left tackle? I think you give both guys reps and you see what happens. Then you got the two young guys. You got Anthony Knapp. You got Gerby Lambert. Gerby Lambert is a better offensive lineman than Anthony Knapp. He's also 5 inches taller, right? Or 4.5 inches taller, or whatever the exact amount is. And so I don't know that Anthony Knapp is physically ready to be a starting left tackle in major college football. I just don't know if that's the case. Gerby Lambert is more physically ready. Is he going to be mentally ready? That's a good question. Only Joe Rudolph and Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock are going to know the answer to that, right? And so I think this is a situation where you get everybody an opportunity at this point. The rubber will meet the road here pretty quickly, and you're going to go with the guy that gives you the best opportunity to win game 1. Does that mean it's going to be the same guy to win game 13 or 14? No, not necessarily. But your goal right now is to get the guy, number one, that can get you to win game 1. And then whoever the backup is the next best guy for that spot. And you start working both of them. You know what I mean? I think that's the order of operations right now. It's not just, Anthony Knapp's number 2. We got to plug him in. Like, that's not exactly how you go about this. And so it's going to be interesting. And look, we're going to be there tomorrow morning. And so I'm hoping that they line up at some point as a first-team offense. And so we can see at least, not necessarily who's going to win the job because it's way too early to say that, but at least get an idea of where the thought process is of the coaching staff.
Would you rework your practice schedule if you were them based on this happening and the fact that we're supposed to be there tomorrow? Does it matter, like, if we see who's taking the number one reps
No,
at this point?
Because I could make a case for 4 different guys to be in that spot. So
no, exactly. And like,
matter.
we've seen the names tossed out. By the way, Andre, you might want to check your math. There's 26 days to go until Texas A&M, not 17.
Yeah, I was going to say, we are nowhere near A&M. That's at the end of the month.
Yeah.
We have plenty of time.
Yeah. You got 3.5 weeks still, almost 4 weeks still, 26 days.
Yeah.
So you've got essentially 3 weeks of camp and then 1 week of game prep leading up.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of
they got time.
It stinks when anyone has a season-ending injury. Like you said, it at least becomes, from a team standpoint, easier to deal with it, I think, when it happens earlier in camp like this, because it does give you more time to move guys around and see who fits on the left, who fits on the right, who is best in tandem with the left guard, who's best in tandem with, that whole thing, because that's going to be a big part. Like when you look at, because look, worst case is what happened in 2021, right? Like,
here's what I found.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Siri.
Siri's involved.
But Blake Fisher, a freshman, gets hurt in the season opener.
First half. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're trying to figure it out as the season goes on. And we saw them trying to figure it out as the season goes on. They ran a lot of different guys in there. Hopefully
4 different ones.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully it doesn't come to that. But again, at least they've got some time now.
Right.
They'd already been moving some guys around, but I think that you probably had 3 spots that were pretty definite. Ashton Craig at center, Charles Jagusah at left tackle, and Billy Schrouth at right guard. Those were 3 pretty much set in stone as far as who your starters were going to be. And then the left guard and the right tackle were in flux a little bit. So this obviously throws a wrench into things, because now, you've just got so much inexperience. Not that Charles Jagusah was that much more.
Well, and that's a great
experience.
Point. That's a great point, because on paper he's got 1 start, and it was a bowl game.
He looked good.
Right.
He looked good.
Oh, he earned
but
his
it's
spot.
Still 1 start
Still
and a
one
handful of
start.
snaps against Stanford. That's right.
Absolutely. And so technically you're going to be replacing him most likely with somebody who's got more starts under their belt than Charles Jagusah did.
If it's Tosh Baker,
Tosh Baker, I mean, that's so, again, that's on paper. Everybody wants Charles Jagusah over anybody else that they would put there. And I totally understand that. And you are more than welcome to mourn the loss of the services of Charles Jagusah for 2024. Totally legit. But this is still a game of football, and you still got to replace them. And so your thought process has to be, okay, I've taken my time for mourning. Now we've got to figure out how to fix this problem, right? How to fill this spot. Notre Dame has a bunch of high caliber recruits that are the backups. They just do. Do they have a lot of experience? No. But they do. I mean, they came in as very high heralded guys. Now it's your job to coach them up and get them where they need to be. That's the bottom line.
See, and here's a good question, because ND Sailor says, go with Tosh Baker at left tackle, Wagner at right tackle, based on his experience going into Texas A&M. I'm assuming he's meaning the experience of Tosh Baker, because, again, he's the only one of any of the options with any real experience. He's played a lot over the last few years. He says they have Knapp and Lambert ready in the meantime. And what you were saying, Vince, like, what happens against Texas A&M might not necessarily be what happens for the rest of the season. How much would you lean on that experience going into a hostile road environment like that to open up the season? Like, would you essentially slide Tosh Baker over there to the left side, like, for the next week, and say, is it working or not? And then move on if it's not. Or, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like, how much importance are you putting on the experience that Baker has relative to everybody else because you're playing a road game to open things up?
Well, the first thing you have to figure out is who's going to be the right tackle. That's the number one thing. And then the guy who's not the right tackle gets first right of refusal at left tackle. I mean, that's how I see that. That would be my order of operations. You know what I mean? So
if Wagner is number one, you're moving Baker, but if it's the other way around, you're moving Wagner.
And we know that Emil Wagner is the number one right tackle right now, but would he be better at left tackle? Right. That's what they have to decide. Correct. You know what I'm saying? And so that is the first decision. Okay, who are we going to try at left and who's the best fit at right? You know what I mean? Because look, Emil Wagner's more athletic and he's got better feet than Tosh Baker, period. And so maybe he's a better fit over on the left side from an attributes standpoint. Now, I still think that you give Tosh first right of refusal, so to speak, right? So, I mean, he gets an opportunity probably first, but I'm still going to give reps to all four guys on the left side.
Yeah, and I mean, because we've talked to plenty of offensive linemen before who have made that move, right tackle to left tackle and vice versa. Yeah. And it is a little bit like a right-hand batter trying to jump over and just all of a sudden start batting left-handed if you've never done it before, because it's different muscle memory. It's a different, it's different movement. You're making that drop with your left leg first as opposed to your right leg first. And it's a different kind of movement. Now, some guys are athletic enough, and that's one of the things that I think is one of Emil Wagner's assets, is probably a little bit more athleticism than some of the other candidates that you're moving in there. So maybe that could make him the better fit for the left side. But again, it's left tackle, and it is, what everyone considers to be the most important position on the offensive line. So I don't think there's any easy answers, but again, this happened on Saturday, so they've already practiced today without any of us being there to see it. So they've already got at least a working idea of where they're going.
I think they had practiced yesterday as well. I believe they practiced on Sunday. I'm not 100%. Sure. I don't know if you have the schedule in front of you or not. But either way,
well, we only got the schedule for what we're allowed to see, I believe.
We got the whole thing, but it doesn't matter. I don't even know where to look for it. I've got it saved someplace.
I do as well. Let me see if I can find it.
I've got it in here somewhere. I just don't know where it is. I think it was the original one. But anyway, the bottom line is they've at least had one practice where they've started to get this thing figured out. And to your question earlier about adjusting practice and things like that, because we're going to be there, I just never have been into the subterfuge of what some college coaches try to hide from the media and all that kind of stuff. Like, look, they put it out that he's hurt and that he's not going to be around for the rest of the year, right? It's out there. We're all going to be watching. You run practice the way you're always going to run practice. You have to run practice so that you can be effective with the way that you want to run practice. Get everything accomplished that you want to get accomplished. You can't think about the fact that we're out there for 5 periods. You know what I mean? I would not in any way change what I want to do from a practice plan standpoint, because at the end of the day, I've got to have practice so that I can get my guys ready. And even more so, you're going to need reps on the offensive line right now. And the more, team reps, and when I say team, I mean like 5 offensive linemen together, not necessarily with the rest of the team, but 5 offensive linemen together, working together, communicating together. The more reps I can have, the more film I can have so that I can go back and evaluate the 3 or 4 guys that I'm going to give a shot at left tackle, the better off we're going to be. Because the more data you have, the more confident you can be that you're making the right decision.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got this feeling that, again, we're probably not talking about game 1, but I feel like this potentially opens the door.
Yeah.
For especially a guy like Kirby Lambert.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We already knew that there was a lot of talent in the size and everything else there. And with this happening, I think that there's a really good, I think there's a really good, I'm not saying it's going to happen at this point, but it opens a big door for the possibility that we could see him starting at some point this season.
Look, Brian made a good point this afternoon, and basically, he said, if you're Marcus Freeman, you pull Joe Rudolph into your office and you're like, look, you got to get him ready. Like, you got to get Gerby Lambert ready. That is now one of your primary jobs as an offensive line coach at Notre Dame. You got a kid who just came in. He's 6'7", 320 pounds. He's got all the athletic ability in the world. Make it happen. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to get him ready, even if it's
figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out, man. Like, that is what you're getting paid to do.
Well, look,
figure it out.
No, that's exactly right, because regardless of who ends up at number one, knock on wood, injuries do still happen.
100%. Get them ready.
Someone's got to be the next guy, and that guy, whoever it happens to be, has got to be ready to step in and get the job done. Yes. So even, and that includes obviously game 1 against Texas A&M. It's multiple guys are going to have to be ready to go. So
absolutely. Like I said, and when I say get him ready, I mean, is it starting? Is it as the primary backup? Get him ready. Get him ready. Because you're probably going to see him at some point this season. For whatever reason, there's a decent chance that you're going to see him. So,
because the other side of this, because we've talked about experience with Tosh Baker, and again, Emil Wagner has virtually no experience. He's handful of reps basically so far. So, like, assuming he's the right tackle, it's not like there's a lot of experience there. I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second, but I guess my point is, it's not optimal probably, to go into a road game to open up the season with a freshman as one of your starting tackles, but it's not like it's uncharted territory, because again, they did it just 3 years ago with Blake Fisher when they went to Florida State that season before he got injured. I think the biggest thing is he the guy that's showing he's the best guy for the job? They talk about consistency and all that kind of stuff all the time. Is he the guy who's the most consistent and the guy who shows that he can get the job done? And if he can do that, I wouldn't have any problem if he was the guy. I wouldn't start somebody ahead of him just because he's got a little bit more experience if he shows that he's ready for the job.
Well, and the thing is, I think because of the unique situation that Notre Dame is in right now, there's really nobody with experience, right? I mean,
and that's the thing. Baker's literally the only one,
and that's only experience in the program. It's not even really experience starting. He's got a couple of starts under his belt, but it's not really a lot. So if you're talking experience from a playing standpoint, it's pretty much an even field at this point. So I feel like you can just throw that out the window. Now, there will be a little bit of, hey, he's been in the program, he knows what we want, that kind of experience. And okay, that's fine. But at the end of the day, these guys are all pretty much on the same path as far as what they've done on Saturdays in a Notre Dame uniform. They're all right there. None of them have massive experience.
Yeah, and again, ND Saylor, I'm not saying Gerby Lambert is ready right now, but right now is also what, if they practiced on Sunday, 6 practices into his college career,
Right.
So what is he 12 more practices from now? Like, has he made considerable growth? And whether he was beaten by a walk-on or, it's like, that's part of the learning process, right? It comes with moving from high school to college, whether it's a walk-on or RJ Oben or, whoever it happens to be, because you're going up against men who have been in the program and, lifting weights and physical and have something between the ears at the same time. So I'm not saying that he's definitely ready right now. I'm just saying if he shows that he is ready to be the guy, then I wouldn't have reservations about putting him out there. If he's the guy who is performing the most consistently and showing that he can have the, get the job done, then I'm not going to keep him out just because he's a freshman.
Agreed. Completely. Best man plays at this point. I mean, we're in a situation where you all got to grow up. It's time, whether it's Anthony Knapp, whether it's Gerby Lambert, whether it's Emil, who doesn't matter. It's time for everybody to grow up because Notre Dame needs a starter on an offense and on a team that is a national championship contending team. And making the playoff means you're in contention. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
In case anybody wants to read between the lines, I'm just saying they should make the playoff, regardless of who their tackles are. And so who's going to step up and be a part of that? That's the question right now, and that's what they're going to have to figure out. And another point that was made this afternoon, which I think is a really good one, I think the left guard spot, that kind of hits fast forward now too, because you're going to want to figure out who your left guard is so that they can start communicating with whoever the left tackle is. I feel like that competition is going to end quicker than maybe it would have if Jagusah was still in there. You know what I'm saying?
No, for sure. Because having Jagusah over there gave you the luxury of being able to rotate guys in and out and experiment and all that different kind of stuff. But now, if you're auditioning the whole left side of the line at the same time, that's not a good place to be.
No, you want to have as much time with whoever going to be your starters as you possibly can from a communication standpoint and all of the above.
But I'm going to tell you though, that probably also means that it's going to be Pat Coogan starting off the season.
I get it.
Because of the consistency.
Terrible decision, but I get it.
Whatever Joe Rudolph felt about him going back to last year, he has been the more.
Now we need that consistent guy. Now we need him. We need to have him in there. I know.
Well, would you rather have peaks and valleys and have your quarterback get flattened on the second play?
Depends on how deep your valleys are. I don't know how deep the valleys are for Rocco right now.
Right.
He's a senior. His valleys shouldn't be that low. You know what I mean? And his peaks will definitely be higher than Pat Coogan's.
I know you're not a music man, Vince, but I felt like you were writing a song just then.
I mean, I like the musical, The Music Man. That was a good one. He's a what? He's a what? He's a music man.
Yeah, I mean, again, and this is more about the opener to me, like, where you would start the season with Pat Coogan. That doesn't necessarily mean that Rocco is going to get, just kind of, thrown away and become yesterday's news. But because of what you're talking about, it feels like Coogan kind of holds down that spot where there is less rotation there in the short term as they figure out who that left tackle is going to be, because of all the things, the stability that you do need across the line. And if you're auditioning, Spindler and whoever is to his left out there together at the same time, I don't know. I don't think that's a very desirable position to be in.
Yeah, there's so many question marks that need to be answered now. Even more, look, I think we can all agree offensive line was the position group we had the most questions about. Well, you can multiply that by about 10 now. So it's still by far the most questioned group on this team. And we're going to see who Joe Rudolph really is too. That's the other piece of this. We were going to find out who Joe Rudolph was anyway this year, because most of these guys have been Joe Rudolph guys and have been coached by him and, that kind of thing. Now you're really going to find out, because he's got his work cut out for him to put together an offensive line that can match the talent around them.
Do you think having a quarterback like Riley Leonard, it's not like he had a bunch of All-Americans in front of him at Duke. He had a solid offensive line, but not lights out. I think the center was probably, or the guy that got drafted last year. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but I guess my point is the fact that you've got a guy like Riley Leonard who is going to be more mobile, who can run and you can sort of design things one way or the other. Do you think that can help negate some of this, especially early in the season?
If I'm not mistaken, the LSU offensive line last year wasn't amazing. You know what I mean? Mike Denbrock did a good job of, not putting the game on the back of the offensive line, right? You might have to do similar things. And the fact that you've got Riley Leonard, look, I still think to a man across the board, Notre Dame's got better offensive line men than Duke had last year. If you talk about recruiting rankings and, all of those different things, Notre Dame's got a better offensive line, regardless of the fact that they don't have a whole lot of experience as a whole, right? And so they just have to play up to their potential. And some of them may have to get to their potential a little quicker than maybe they had to before this injury, right? And so I would still take Notre Dame's offensive line over Duke's offensive line last year. And I'm sure In a private moment, Riley Leonard would probably say the same thing. But your point that Riley Leonard being a mobile quarterback and maybe can get himself out of some trouble and some things of that nature, I think that absolutely helps the situation as opposed to having somebody that's just a drop back pocket passer.
I've seen this come up, and I think Indy Sailor might have brought this up before. What do you think about this one? Might need to use the tight end more on the left than planned.
I wouldn't be changing my offensive strategy because of one guy. No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't do that. Look, you've got 2 good tight ends as long as they're healthy. 3, if you got 3 really good tight ends. To be perfectly honest with you, they'll use them. But the last thing I want to see for this offense is a bunch of 12 and 13 personnel. That's not going to get it done. You're not going to be a dynamic offense if that's what you're trying.
That's why I think when you start attaching the tight end in specific situations, it's just going to tip that you're probably going to be passing in that. So, it shows that you're trying to, pass protect
right
a little bit more in that. Now, if you're in a game and it becomes
like a max protect situation, okay, fine. But
right.
I'd rather have
that. I wouldn't go into that with as my main game plan, is what I'm saying.
100%.
Like, you could do that every now and then, maybe.
Right. Because then you don't want to.
If it's an issue during the game, if it becomes an issue during that first game specifically, I think.
Yeah, and you don't want to tip your hand, as to what you're doing too. I mean, you want to be careful with that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be changing my offensive philosophy because of one injury, unless that one injury was a quarterback, and then you can't do certain things, but not because of a left tackle who has one career start under their belt.
Look, the bottom line now is, I think what you said just a minute ago, we're going to find out a lot about Joe Rudolph now.
Oh, yeah.
At this point, because he walked into a situation where he inherited 2 NFL tackles.
Yep.
And looked like he did a pretty good job of developing Charles Jagusah to be the next guy on the left side. And if Emil Wagner turns out to be the guy on the right side, he's done a pretty good job of developing him as well. But this is where you make your money now, because you're behind the 8 ball. You've got to get this figured out 26 days. And you've got to get it figured out in less than 26 days, because I don't think you really want this competition going into game week. You want to have this figured out ideally within the next 2 weeks. And then you've got kind of that tail end part of camp, and then into game week, you're ready to go. You've got your guys, your 5 out there, your 5 best, and you've got it figured out. But this is where he makes his money now. Like
100%.
This is it. This is where we find out.
Yeah, we've got 3 more practice viewings, and I guarantee you we will not know what the outcome is. By then, just based on when they are, and we're not really allowed to say when and where and all that kind of stuff. But we've got 3 more viewings, and I would be shocked if anything was set in stone by that 3rd viewing that we have. I'd be shocked. So it's going to take some time, and I don't want it to be an overnight decision, to be perfectly honest with you.
I'm not saying they need to rush by any means.
Right. Either. I want them to give Gerby Lambert some time. I want to give Emil Wagner time. I want to give Tosh Baker time. Those would be my 3 major ones. And then if you've got time and you want to, throw Anthony Knapp into the conversation, then fine. But those 3 are definitely getting first team reps for me over the next few days to see what they've got. Hey guys, here we go. Let's see where you're at, And then once you figure out, okay, this guy can or this guy can't or whatever the case may be, then you start working specifically with the guys that can or the guy that can.
Right.
And then you tailor your offense and you coach them up and you get them ready. That's what you've got to do.
Mike says he thinks Lambert can be an excellent left tackle right away because he's that good. And now look, I'm not going to say he's not that good, but the problem with that line of thinking is you're basing everything on what you saw in the recruiting process.
Correct.
High school film and recruiting rankings. And I would just say, let's pump the brakes a little bit. We're going to talk about Deion Colzie in rapid fire. People feel so strongly about Deion Colzie, largely because of everything that happened as a recruit, how highly he was rated as a recruit, all those different things. That's what I'm saying. Now, can Gerby Lambert be that? Yes.
Maybe.
And like I said,
maybe.
Yeah. In theory, yes, that's why they got him, right? But he's got to actually show and prove that he can do it against actual men on the other side of the line of scrimmage. That's what he's got to show. at this point. So I'm not going to say that he can be excellent, especially on the left side right away. Let's see him be good first, because,
right.
Again, hopefully we get to see a few more snaps of him doing some stuff out there in these 3 practice availabilities that we get. But I'll be really curious to see what this looks like. Like if we get to see them line up, first team, second team.
Yeah.
When we get out there again.
Absolutely. I would be shocked if we got to see a whole lot of team stuff, but you never know. And I guarantee you.
I just mean the way.
Just lining up for drills and stuff.
The way they
like
take the offensive line over.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they've still been working as a first team
That's
offensive
true.
line, second team offensive line. So
yeah, absolutely. But yeah,
I think there'll be a lot more cameras rolling tomorrow.
Gerby Lambert,
if and when that happens,
is a really good talent. Nobody's debating that. He's got size. He's got talent. There's no debate there. But his timeline just got sped up because when Charles Jagusah was the starting left tackle and you had a competition over at right tackle, he didn't have to be. He could just come in, learn, get better, take a red shirt, the whole deal. Things changed overnight, literally, for Gerby Lambert. Now his development is in fast forward. It just is. Whether he becomes a starter or he becomes the initial backup, now his clock has spun up a little bit. Is that fair? Not necessarily, but that's kind of where we're at. And so,
look, it's an opportunity. Blake Fisher showed he could do it. Blake Fisher showed that he can do it now.
And eventually Joe Alt showed that he could do it after they went through 3 other tackles.
Right.
But again.
And I think it took Joe Alt a little bit longer in part just because he was a tight end in high school. And, he was like still learning the position a little bit. But it's an opportunity for Gerby Lambert, whether it's first team reps or second team reps or whatever, he's going to get plenty of opportunities now to show himself and whether or not he can do it or not. So there's opportunities for all these guys.
Right. Exactly. That's the way you have to look at it. You have an opportunity.
Yep. Kyler says it has to be Lambert or Absher. Wagner is a bit undersized still, unless the agile skill set is what we're aiming for. I mean, you
got to get over the Wagner size thing. Like that, he's never going to be that guy.
He's at least 300 pounds now. So it's not like he's a small guy anymore. He's at least 300 pounds. We haven't got the newly updated weights, but you can tell by looking at him. He's right in that 300-pound ballpark.
He's never going to be 320.
He's not tiny by any means.
He's never going to be that, right? I mean, just get over it. Like, let's stop with he can't put weight on. He's going to be fine. He was the starter at right tackle, period, end of discussion. That's where they were at. He got pretty much all of the right tackle reps with the first team that we've seen. He's the starting right tackle. So his weight must not have been that big of a deal when it comes to whether he was going to play or not. So that part we have to take down a notch. The other part we have to take down a notch, Selvin Absher has been practicing at guard this whole time, never at tackle. So now you're going to ask a kid with 0 experience to switch positions midstream. Is it possible? Sure. But I don't think that's the ideal way to go about this either, to be perfectly honest with you. He was told, you're a guard. So he's been practicing at guard. There's a big difference between guard and tackle. So I would be surprised if Selvin Absher gets any type of shot at this point.
No,
but
you're right about that. Now, but the other side of that is Jagusah was playing some guard himself, like in camp and during the season last year, and he ended up being the tackle by the time the season was over with. So there's a
lot of time though there. You know what I mean?
Like, no, I know. Yeah. If we're talking, there's a difference between camp and the end of the season, obviously, and 1 week into camp and the start of the season. And again, I don't necessarily think that whoever gets this when the season starts is going to be the guy who finishes.
Yeah, that's
the season
definitely a possibility.
I think that it depending on how that guy does, obviously, but I think that if it is still shaky because you did essentially have to rush the process now because you weren't expecting to have to develop a left tackle coming into camp. You thought you had your guy ready to go. I just think that there could be some flux as it goes along.
Yeah.
Like you could see somebody take that spot. And the other part of that too is whoever it is going to be really tested in game 1, whereas games 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
it's gonna like they can kind of get their feet under them a little bit more, but your feet are just going to be held to the fire more in that season opener because of who you're playing and where you're playing the game.
Right. And look, they're also going to get really tested in practice because Notre Dame has one of the best defensive lines in the country. So that's also kind of a, thrown into the fire kind of a situation. They're going to be going up against some dudes, right? And so that will show that will help show who can do it and who can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Josh is asking about Schrouth. I won't completely rule it out. I just feel like Schrouth is more a guard than he is a tackle. Do you feel the same way?
Well, and
it's not like it hadn't crossed my mind because especially when you do have two other guys with a lot of experience who could fill those guard spots. I don't know. What do you think?
I would not move. He's already been solidified at right guard. He's a young guy. Why would you you have to minimize as many dominoes as you possibly can with this kind of a situation. Just because something happened to one position doesn't mean you changed 3 others. You know what I mean? You've got to be careful with how many positions you're adjusting essentially. So if you move Billy from right guard to right tackle, okay, so you're changing Billy. Well, now you're also changing Emil Wagner because now he's going to go over to the left side, right? And then you're also changing either Pat Coogan or Rocco Spindler from left guard to right guard. So now that's 3 guys that you're changing. You know what I mean? That's a lot of change, and you want to try to minimize that as much as you possibly can.
I agree because the offensive line has to be able, all 5 guys have to be able to work in unison. If you had an injury at wide receiver, you just plug a wide receiver in, and this wide receiver is not dependent on this wide receiver for how he's going to function. But on the offensive line, it's essentially an accordion effect. And, really a domino effect when you start kind of laying it out the way you're laying it right there. Once you start shifting guys, I think you want as little movement as possible.
Exactly.
For sure. Well, Vince, I wanted to talk a little bit. I've got some comments from Irish defensive coordinator Al Golden that I wanted to get in here as well. And we can always come back to the offensive line talk in rapid fire if we need to, or kind of later on as well, if some people pop in with some different questions or comments or something like that. But, another injury that happened relatively quickly, I think it was day 1. It's like once these things started happening, it's like it feels like a month ago, but it was just a couple of days ago.
When camp starts, you just got to brace yourself for injuries. You got to brace yourself for bad news. I mean, you're not going to get a bunch of good news during camp.
Yeah.
Because good news is expected, right? Or, okay, guys are getting better, blah, 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 blah. Just be ready for devastating news because that's the only kind of news you're going to get,
Yeah. Boring is what you hope for.
Yes.
But unfortunately, you just don't get boring all that often, it seems like. So Gabe Rubio injured right away early in camp. And here's Al Golden. We got the chance to talk to him on Friday about some guys that he has seen step up on the defensive line in the wake of Gabriel Rubio's injury.
Well, it's a great question. So, obviously Donnie and Jason continued. They benefited greatly from the spring. But Donnie and Jason, Armel has really stepped up, and Cole Mullins has played a lot too. So I would say, from that group, we'll be the 5th in 6th with Gabe's absence. And then obviously, hopefully, we're not too long with Gabe. We'll see how that goes.
Some interesting names there. A couple of them I think are expected. Donovan Heidish and Jason Onye, the first couple names out of his mouth when he was talking about Donnie, of course. Armel Mukum has emerged in the first week of camp, and freshman Cole Mullins jumping into that mix as well. What did you think when you heard some of those names there, Vincenzo?
It just tells you how deep this defensive line is, right? I mean, there's a chance for 11 or 12 guys to actually play on this defensive line. And the fact that he rattled off 4 or 5 names when he's talking about replacing Gabe Rubio just speaks to it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like there's just so much talent in this room. And for as much angst is out there about, defensive line recruiting, and I get it. I understand where people are coming from. This defensive line is stacked. Like they have a ton of depth. And while it stinks that Gabe Rubio went down, and there's obviously a chance he could come back at some point, they've got guys that can just step right in and fill that void. You know what I mean? And they'll welcome him back. Don't get me wrong. But in the meantime, they've got guys that are balling out. I love it.
And look, I think it speaks to the development as well that's going on there. Like we were just talking about, Joe Rudolph has got to develop these offensive linemen and get them ready to go. And even though, as you just mentioned, the defensive line recruiting is not where I think most people thought it would be, or, think it needs to be or whatever, but the defensive line development is there. And the fact that you're hearing some names like that pop up right away is, I think that it shows, especially with a guy like Cole Mullins, because again, you just don't know what you're going to get all the time when these guys walk in the door, and are they going to be ready? Cole Mullins was not an early enrollee. He hadn't gone through the spring. He came in the summer, and as a freshman defensive lineman, just, if you're in the trenches on either side of the ball, you got to be able to do man stuff down there, Vince. And to be able to do man stuff on the defensive line, in the interior defensive line, like Cole Mullins is doing right now, is pretty impressive, I think.
I love the fact that Armel Mukam, by the way, I know this has nothing to do with his talent. I love the fact that he wears number 88. That's awesome. It's freaking awesome, man. Like, you're wearing number 88 and you're 6'3", 302 pounds. You know what I mean? Like, I dig it. I think that's fantastic. But no, there's so much talent there on the interior and on the outside, but mainly on the interior, that just next man up. Let's roll.
So a name that didn't come up in that conversation was Brennan Vernon, guy who did come in with, some fairly considerable accolades and praise of his own when he came in last year. So where's Vernon in his development?
Just young guy, just continue to learn it, trying to get better, but not at that level of Armel right now, but he'll get there and he'll add a little bit more power, a little bit more strength, a little more weight, and that will help him. Be able to relax in there and play naturally, which is what we're trying to get him to do. Sorry.
Relax, play naturally. Good, bad, indifferent. What'd you think?
The adding weight thing, I think, surprised me just a little bit. I mean, I'm trying to remember, like, seeing him in person, it felt like he had plenty of weight on him. Yeah. But he's only 262 pounds and playing on the inside at 262. He probably needs a little bit more weight, to be perfectly honest with you. And so that actually makes a lot of sense. And the fact that he's like, he just needs him to settle down. It sounds like he's pressing a little bit, kind of seeing maybe the writing on the wall with some of these younger guys, that kind of a thing. And so that's probably something he's not terribly happy about, but he's only a second-year player. And so, just need to kind of take a breath, put on some more good weight, and just keep plugging away at it.
Yeah. I mean, like a guy like Armel Mukam has 40 pounds on him, basically.
And that's a lot when you're on the interior, right? I mean,
it is.
You kind of need that weight. And
even Donovan Heinisch, that's been something that he needed to do when he got here. And
he's got 12 pounds.
Yeah. And we started to see some of that click last year. And now as a junior, you've got a little bit more bulk on him, a little bit more strength. And I think that, you're starting to see even more consistency potentially for him. So, like Tommy's saying, Washington doesn't like Vernon for whatever, I don't know. Like, again.
Well, look, at 262, you're too light to be playing on the inside.
Right.
Just
because even Howard Cross is an undersized interior lineman, and he's got almost 30 pounds on him too. He's got like 25, 26 pounds on him.
And he's 4 inches shorter. You know what I mean? Like, he needs to be able to put on some more weight. I mean, you're going to get pushed around on the interior if you're that light. Bottom line. So it has nothing to do with a coach being against you. You got to put on more weight if you're going to be on the inside.
Yeah. I think that this might have, like Mr. 2.0 says, I think this might have something to do with it as just more than anything, just what we've been talking about. He doesn't like the fact that he's 262 and probably shows because like Vernon so far, not a guy who I would say has popped in the times that our eyeballs have been out there so far. That doesn't mean he won't, but Bubs asked if Cole Mullins is around that same size. He is, but obviously if Cole Mullins is producing and the other guy isn't, then then size isn't as big a factor for Cole Mullins.
It's about a 3-pound difference and a 1-inch difference between the two. But yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying he's holding the weight specifically against him, but you're getting the job done. You can
matter.
Work around that. Yeah. But if you're not getting the job done, it becomes a bigger factor in the whole thing.
Yep, exactly.
So some more from Al Golden asked about Kingston Viliamu Asa and his development since he showed up here in the spring.
Yeah, just preparation, maturity, and IQ. Like those three things are what makes transitions easier, right? Are you mature enough? Do you understand what it takes preparation-wise? And then do you have the IQ, the football IQ, to make that transition? That's what's allowing him to transition. What I see is a more comfortable player. And obviously, if you're a freshman and you're getting the green dot in some portion of practice, then you're doing something right to earn that trust. So that part of it, but the three elements precede where he is right now, and I just think he's playing a little bit more relaxed.
Is he going to be hard to keep off the field?
Is it going to be hard to keep him off the field?
Yeah, in terms of not playing him a lot as a freshman right away.
I mean, I would hope that he would fight into the mix. He's doing a great job right now, but we got scrimmages coming up and a bunch of different things, and but right now I'm really excited about the young man, and it's warranted because of the way he approaches it.
Not getting out his anointing oils just yet, it sounds like.
That was an interesting conversation. Like that was an interesting response. Like
and that's why I left the kind of the follow-up question in there rather than putting it separately to kind of get your take on that.
His hesitation spoke volumes to me. He likes where he's at. He thinks he's really good for a freshman, for being his first time in the system, all of those different things. And when the question was asked, is it going to be hard to keep him on the field or keep him off the field? I feel like he wanted to say, no, it's not going to be hard. I just don't put him out there. Like I just feel like he's not ready to, as taking your words, right? He's not ready to anoint him as the next great thing. He's not ready to anoint him as the starter right now over Drake Bowen. You know what I mean? And so that was an interesting response. I think he's a little lower on the list of Al Golden than he is in the fans' eyes. I'll say that.
But that's also not a bad thing because you got to remember this is a freshman linebacker playing a very important spot because you lost a guy like JD Bertrand. And they talk about the green dot. In the green dot, just to make sure that everyone knows what that, I think most people know what it is, but the green dot is the dot that they put on the back of the helmets of the guys who can wear the communications, with the sideline. So that means if Drake Bowen, the middle linebacker ahead of Kingston Viliamu Asa on the depth chart, middle linebacker right now, like if Drake Bowen is off the field, then Kingston gets the green dot, for example, at least in the practices that they're running right now, which means that he is the guy communicating, calling the defense for the rest of the guys on the field. So is he completely ready for that? I wouldn't expect him to be completely ready for that.
And that's realistic though. And that's very rare as a fan realistic. And some of the media out there too is not super realistic about who Kingston is right now and what his projection should be for this season. And I think also his response to me kind of speaks a little bit to where Drake Bowen is too.
Hear about Drake Bowen here in just a second.
Oh, well, even better. But to me, that was like, why would I want to rush this kid on the field when I've got Drake Bowen on the field already? Like that, you know what I mean? Like there's no rush to get him on the field. Why rush it when you've got a guy who's killing it?
You know where everybody raves about Kingston right now? Viliamu Asa?
The barbershop?
Yeah, the barbershop. He hasn't seen a barbershop in a few years, so they're begging him to come in. Let us cut that thing. Come on. The pass rush, his pass rush skills are what everyone's, and that's where that at least going into the season, I think is going to be his biggest role. And I've talked about this before, like those third down, whether it's packages, time situations. That's where Kingston Viliamu-Asa is going to have a chance to carve his niche and make his name.
And I love that
early on.
I love that.
Play to his strengths as much as possible.
Right.
Put him in a situation where he doesn't have to think a lot. It's like, here's what's in front of you. It's a pass rush situation. Go get him, big boy.
Exactly.
There's not much more than that.
Oh, I can't wait. He'll be on like 10, 15 plays a game, and he'll have like 2 sacks or something, and everyone would be like, he's got to be the starter and middle linebacker. That's what's going to happen. But I think that's a perfect scenario for him. Be a package player, play to your strengths, go make plays. Completely agree. I think that would be a perfect scenario.
Yeah. And I think we're going to see a lot of him. It's just not going to be as an every down, 3 down type linebacker. It's going to be more situational, but it's going to be to everyone's benefit.
And that's okay,
I believe. Yes. So speaking of Drake Bowen, asked him about how Bowen has stepped up, kind of filling J.D. Bertrand's shoes. Again, with Bertrand off to the NFL now, Bowen steps into that potential starting spot as the middle linebacker.
I didn't realize somebody had said something, I don't know when it was, just about, I didn't realize that, because, Drake, I feel like Drake has been around for a while, and Jaden Osbury has been around for a while, and Jalen Sneed. So I don't look at it like, I know we lost 2 starters to the NFL, but I hope we have a bunch of NFL guys coming up too, and a bunch of guys that really gleaned a lot from whatever their role was a year ago and being in those meeting rooms. But I don't look at it like any drop off, and I'm pretty sure Max in that room is up for the challenge in terms of anybody on the outside saying that, how are we going to replace, how are we going to play? Yeah, they're ready to go. They'll be ready to go.
And he mentioned Jalen Sneed and Jaden Osbury in that group as well. I think there are a few more things that Jaden Osbury needs to continue to kind of, get together. I think Bowen is definitely ahead. Sneed is ahead, but it's interesting to hear, because again, Bowen is a guy who obviously doesn't have a lot of experience, but is a guy who was an early enrollee last year. He's been here for 2 springs already and 1 full season, and now going into his second training camp. And I think that I'm sure that kind of being an understudy to J.D. Bertrand last year and being in that room and as smart as Drake Bowen is to begin with, and as athletic as Bowen is to begin with, that's probably why Al Golden feels the way that he feels about it.
Oh, there's no question about it. I mean, Drake Bowen was studying at the feet of J.D. Bertrand all of last year. How to run the defense, how to operate yourself, how to get yourself prepared, how to study, all of those things. He was right there in his hip pocket the entire time. You can't tell me that doesn't pay dividends, going into this season. You can't tell me that, right? And so, again, I think people are overlooking the effect that Drake Bowen is going to have on this defense, and I think they're all going to be pleasantly surprised. If Al Golden's not worried, because look, we've heard Al Golden speak plenty of times. He's not really one to throw out praise, right? That's just not who he is. And he's
just like the thing with Kingston Viliamu-Asa
right,
second ago.
Exactly.
It's like
perfect.
He said good things about him, but he wasn't just going to heap praise on him and say, nope, we're not going to be able to keep him off the field. He wasn't going to go that far.
Yeah, he's like, they're going to be ready, and Max is up to the challenge. Max Bull, the linebackers coach, he's up to the challenge. So yeah, I'm not that worried about it. I think it's going to be in a great feeling.
I think Bowen and Viliamu-Asa are both going to play really big roles in the defense.
Right.
This year. And of course, Jeff says he's going to start by mid-season. So you're just going to completely disregard Drake Bowen
and everything that the defensive coordinator just said.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You're not going to be able to change the minds of some people that think what they think, when it comes to certain recruits that have done 0 at the college level.
Let's wait till you see a couple of games and you see what Drake Bowen looks like. out there. I think you're going to be pretty impressed with him too.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yes.
Because this time last year, he was the golden recruit that everybody wanted to play over JD Bertrand.
Why isn't he playing more? Yeah, right.
You know
away.
what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Exactly. How quickly?
It's okay. It is what it is. It's okay.
Vince, you know what it is?
Rapid fire time, baby.
Rapid fire, baby. That's right.
Let's go.
Time for some rapid fire. DK getting in, and Angeli is
of course
elite,
he is,
just for the heck of it.
Yep.
So more from Fighting Irish defensive coordinator Al Golden. Some of the biggest praise that he threw out there when we got to talk to him last week, praise for Jeremiah Love. And here is Golden's comparison for Jeremiah Love. Who does Jeremiah Love remind him of?
Again, he's probably going to hate me for saying this. He reminds me of Ricky. He runs like Ricky Waters, just strong and run through, high knee kick, very high, good acceleration. To me, that's who he reminds me of. Maybe he's faster, but that's who he reminds me of in terms of just a violent runner, like a violent runner. And if you're out of place, he's going to get to the next level.
Some pretty big praise there. Vince.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Love, Ricky Waters, a guy who played for 10 years in the NFL, ran for over 10,000 yards, cut over 4,000 yards worth of passes. Are you concerned at all that Love is getting so much hype without really, without doing anything yet, basically?
I mean, I don't know that I'm concerned. It's nice that people are hyping a guy that's actually going to play and, that kind of a deal, because usually it's hyping up somebody's backup. But I can see the comparison. I mean, the skill set is similar, right? I mean, he played running back and wide receiver at Notre Dame. And I'm trying to think of it like the college version of Ricky Waters, right? I mean, the NFL version and the college version, I think, are two different animals to a degree.
I mean, Reggie Bush, Reggie obviously was a smaller frame, not nearly as physical as either probably what we're going to see. Like Jeremiah Love, one has got to prove that he can be physical, but
sure,
not as physically imposing as Ricky Waters. But Reggie could obviously do a lot of everything.
Oh yeah.
Like the modern guy that I've thought of is Alvin Kamara, who was with. He played for Tennessee and he's played for the Saints for the last several years. He does a little bit of everything. He can run between, he catches passes. He can run between the tackles, do all those different kind of things. I'm trying to, like other guys who kind of fit that bill. I kind of struggle, with sort of figuring out exactly who that would be as well. In terms of guys who have been college, bona fide college stars.
I get that. And I don't know that I would have pulled Ricky Waters out of my hat when asked that question, but he probably also wasn't thinking I'm going to be asked for a comparison of an offensive guy either. So it's not like he could have kind of prepped for that. And that's who came to mind. So, I mean, I dig the fact that it came to mind. I think that's awesome, but he probably should have kept number 12 then, right?
I know. Cause they both wore, like, Jeremiah Love wore 12 last year.
Yeah.
Ricky Waters wore 12. Maybe that's in the back of it.
Maybe.
I don't know. But
is he getting too much hype? I don't think he's getting too much hype. People aren't saying that he's going to be a Heisman Trophy candidate, or at least I don't think they are. Maybe they are. I don't think they should. And the fact that the left tackle just went down probably might temper some people's expectations to a degree.
Doesn't help. Yeah.
Doesn't help in the situation any. I think he's going to be dynamic. I think he's going to be really good. The jury's still out on how good. I think all the tools are there. I'll say that. And
I definitely think the extra weight that he's been able to add,
massive, huge,
is going because when you look at, again, like I was saying, Reggie Bush, maybe just in terms of the receiving skills and the ability to do those kind of things and the speed to go along with it. But Bush was not nearly as physical as a guy like Waters. And I think that when I think of Ricky Waters and seeing him play, I just think about this sort of frenetic, like quick twitch all over the place, plus just the ability to lower his shoulder and plow right through you type of guy. And like the lower the shoulder and plow through you, I think needs to be proven at least to some extent by Jeremiah Love. We saw some flashes of that in the blue gold game, and it looks like he's added a little bit more muscle since then. So, again, he hasn't actually, like, we know the kind of athlete that Jeremiah Love is, but he hasn't shown that he can go out and do it at a game. So it just feels like there's some really heavy comparisons being thrown around right now when he hasn't actually taken a snap, as a starter, with the exception of the Sun Bowl.
This is true.
Last year.
This is true, but people could be hopeful, I suppose.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think we've seen that. We've seen plenty of hopeful, right?
Yeah, certainly have.
Interesting. Matt Lee came in and chimed in and he says, so our Irish are going to stink this year, according to so many on social media, just because of a left tackle getting hurt. Don't forget it's something like 12% of anyone, of internet users worldwide, 12% are on Twitter. So like, think about that. 12% of the entire world. So how much stock you want to put on, what's going out there on Twitter X or whatever you want to call it. Let's tamp it a little bit. Like, there's always going to be people who are going to pay.
Oh, of course. And look, here's the other thing.
Season's not over.
Notre Dame fans love to be miserable.
Right.
I'll just leave it at that. They love to be miserable. And this is a perfect opportunity to wallow in that misery.
Joe said we need something after the news today. Well, I mean, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
We're your therapy, right? Cheap
right.
therapy. Show's free.
That's right.
So we talked a little about Tyler Buchner. We always talk a little bit about Tyler Buchner. I guess we don't always, but he's come up. He's come up, right?
2-6. That's right.
Yes.
TB 26.
Yes. So do you buy or sell a Tyler Buchner quarterback package this year, next year, or any year that Tyler Buchner is at Notre Dame?
If Riley Leonard gets hurt, then go ahead and throw a package in. If Riley Leonard is healthy, then no. I do not think you need a Tyler Buchner package. There's nothing that Riley Leonard can't. There's nothing that Tyler Buchner can do that Riley Leonard can't do.
Right.
I'll say that. So what's the point?
I agree. And this is a walk-on wide receiver now.
Correct.
But I think people can't get out of their mind that this was supposed to be Notre Dame's future a couple of years ago. But the reason he is now a walk-on wide receiver is because a little bit more than a year ago, he entered the transfer portal rather than, like, he could be the starting quarterback potentially going into this training camp right now. If he had stayed at Notre Dame, Riley Leonard very well might not be here right now.
That's
and
fair.
The succession plan would look a lot different. And, I saw, we had they had a package for Tyler Buchner when he was a freshman and all this different kind of stuff. Remember, Jack Cohn's skill set, Tyler Buchner's skill set, two completely different things. That's part of why you had a Tyler Buchner package, because of the kind of athleticism that Buchner could bring to the field. That, along with the fact that they wanted to get him on the field, get him some actual game reps, because of the fact that he was going to be the starting quarterback the following year after Jack Cohn. None of that is in play right now. So I see zero benefit of designing some kind of Buchner package going forward.
Yeah. I mean, look, if Riley Leonard gets hurt, then Buchner has a skill set that the other three do not have. Then we can have a discussion on something that he could bring to the table, right? Because those other three guys aren't the runners that Riley Leonard are. They're all athletic. They can all move the chains, that kind of a thing, but they're not Tyler Buchner. Tyler Buchner is dynamic with his legs. No matter whether you think he was a good quarterback or not a good quarterback, he's dynamic with his legs. I think we can all get on that page, right? The other three quarterbacks are not dynamic with their legs, okay? So, yeah, you could put in a package. You could have that ready to go if you wanted to, if Riley Leonard gets hurt. If he's healthy, just stay as far away from that as possible. There's just no point.
Correct. Agree. All of the above. Vince, based on what we've seen in the opening days of training camp, scale of 1 to 10, what chance do you give Deion Colzie to be a significant wide receiver contributor this season.
Based on what we've seen so far at practice, I put it at about a 1.5 because he has not even been practicing with the 1s or the 2s. And so I'm not saying he'll be buried there forever, but as of right now, he's not even sniffing the rotation. So I've got to put it pretty low, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would put it at a 2 at best because, again, like this guy, when we saw the split field last week and they were running first and second string offense on one field, third and fourth string on the other, he was with the third and fourth string guys. And, we've already seen some inconsistency with just the simple stuff like holding on to the football. And that's been the biggest thing for Colsey.
Yeah.
And, look, they brought in Bo Collins, Chris Mitchell, and Jaden Harrison. And so far, all three of those guys have looked better than anything that we've seen from Colsey in this camp so far. In fact, Jaden Harrison is the guy who's turning heads right now, and we weren't even really sure, what to think of him as an actual wide receiver, more as a kick returner.
I mean, if you write down the names of all the receivers that you think are going to play, in the order that you think they're going to play, Colsey might come in 8, 9, 10 in that neighborhood. And that includes the current freshman. I believe there's 11 scholarship wide receivers off the top of my head. I think he's probably in the 8, 9 range, right now from a coach trust / playing standpoint. You're gonna have a bunch of guys ahead of him right now. So, unfortunately for him, I just don't see that being the case.
Andrew asked why they sold him on staying. They should have let him transfer. I don't think they necessarily sold him. I think he wanted to stay, and I think the degree, might have played into that. I think this was much more about, because I think that if you went back to last season with the things going on in that room, I think there was a greater chance than not that he was going to leave by the end of the season. But once they made the move at receiver coach, he ultimately
you also have to remember what that room looked like after the exodus of all those other guys, right? It was empty. There's hardly anybody there. Of course, they're going to ask him to stay. That I'm sure that conversation took place. I'm sure they weren't on their knees begging, but at the same time, there was nobody in that room, Sean. Of course they're going to want him to stick around.
That's
they
true.
Recruited him for a reason.
He still hadn't secured all the transfers yet.
100%. We want to stop the bleeding. So yes, we want you to stick around. They're not going to make any playing time, promises or anything like that. But you want him to stick around. He's still a body. He's still a guy that you can count on. He's still a good kid. He's not a kid that you want to, run off the team or anything like that. So you absolutely ask him to stick around.
Yeah. I think it's going to take, basically what would amount to some unfortunate situations for Colsey to get real opportunities.
And it's unfortunate. I would love for him to get an opportunity, but he's had a lot of those opportunities and it just hasn't worked out for him. I mean, that's kind of just where we're at right now.
Yep. Vince, we got a lot of details on the Michigan sign stealing investigation and scandal, which reminds me, did you delete those 52 texts that I sent you last month?
I keep all my texts. We're in trouble.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, do something with it a little bit later, I guess. So, Jerome Moore, man. I mean, is like one of 7 members of the staff accused of violating NCAA rules.
If anybody's wondering why Jim Harbaugh is now the coach of the LA Chargers, you should be wondering no more. Okay, I'll just leave it at that part. But you continue with. I mean,
go ahead.
When you sent me the rundown for the show, and I started reading because I haven't been following it as closely as maybe I should have, as far as like everything that's coming down with Michigan and everything. I've been kind of watching the Olympics and whatever. Holy crap, Sean! Like as I'm reading through it, it's nothing that I didn't think was going on, but the fact that they have proof. Like proof positive that this stuff occurred, and they've got numbers to back it up, and they've got level 1 violations and all of these different things. It's just like they might as well have had a neon sign outside the practice facility just saying like, we're guilty. I mean, it just like destroying hard drives. And
Here's some of the highlights for anyone maybe who hasn't seen. So the investigation revealed, among other things, 52 texts sent by New Michigan head coach Sharon Moore that he sent to Connor Stallions that he deleted. He deleted 52 texts, and then ultimately they used something where they were able to go back and recover the text. But he deleted 52 texts for Connor Stallions. There were several removed computer hard drives from computers in the building.
Crazy.
Moore is considered a potential repeat violator by the NCAA because in August of 2023, he negotiated a resolution to claims that he contacted recruits during the COVID-19 recruiting dead period. 5 of the NCAA's draft says that they used ticket information, film, photographs, and interviews to determine that Connor Stallions had impermissibly scouted at least 13 future Michigan opponents at least 58 different times between 2021 and 2023, that Stallions directed others to scout some opponents multiple times, including one team they scouted 7 times in 2022 alone. And the draft of this also says that Stallions was directing like interns and, those kind of people at Michigan to do, a lot of the dirty work, and that he led them to believe that what they were doing was not against the rules. And of course, they also have the Central Michigan disguise, the fact that he obtained a pass to get on the Central Michigan sideline. But Jim Harbaugh, Chris Partridge, Denard Robinson, Stallions also accused of committing level 1 violations, which are the most serious by the NCAA. It is virtually staggering, Vince, how much they've got against these guys in this whole deal.
It is awesome, frankly. I'm enjoying it. I'm wondering how deep it has to go for them to have to give up their championship. Like that, honestly, that's seriously what I'm thinking right now. Because these are some pretty serious allegations. And I don't even know if we can even use the word allegations anymore, because I'm pretty sure they're guilty of every single one of them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come out with them in this draft. Like they have proof that this all took place. And so I don't know, man.
It feels like if the Fab Five, Michigan basketball, Chris Webber and, all those guys, like if they had to vacate a Final Four appearance because of, basically some BS. It was like, it's stuff that started, I think, when Chris Webber was in high school, like taking some cash from a guy who ended up being connected. Like if they can vacate that for that, this seems like how can you not vacate everything they did last year?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
Because I know the people, I've heard the defenders and especially obviously the Michigan people saying, well, we won the games, after, there wasn't any more of the scouting going on. Well, you still had a boatload of information that you got from that,
Yeah. There's no way that you can defend what they did. There's no way you can defend it. I'm sorry. There's no way you can defend it. It's just wrong on so many levels, So I hope they get whatever it is that they get, and I'll enjoy it when they get it. I would love for their championship to be taken away. It probably won't happen because, as Joe says, the NCAA doesn't have any backbone anymore. I tend to agree with that. So they probably will just get a slap on the wrist. But my goodness, these are some serious allegations. Like, come on, man. Why do you have to break the rules? If you're that good, why do you have to break the rules? If you think you're that good, why are you breaking the rules?
Yeah, and it like throw out anyone who's actually attached to Michigan. Like the amount of people who are theoretically supposed to be neutral, who I've heard say, like I've heard some fairly prominent college football writers saying, well, everyone does some form of sign stealing. If you don't understand the difference between doing it while you're standing on the sideline or sitting in a press box during a game against the team you're playing, like in the moment.
Correct.
That kind of sign stealing is completely different than sending people out, recording signals weeks before the game to obtain as much information and catalog as much
Right.
of the signs as that is completely different than actually doing it during a game. And if you don't understand how different those two things are, you really shouldn't have anything to do with college sports. I don't think in any capacity. If you don't understand the difference between those two things.
100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. They went way too far. They went way too far with this entire thing. Way too far. And then they covered it up. When they say the cover up is worse than the crime, they all knew. They all knew. And
they all knew, Vince, and they let it happen.
That's all I'm saying. And then they tried to cover it up after the fact. So, you're erasing text messages, hard drives, all these different things. The head coach bails, basically, so he doesn't have to face the music. All these different things have occurred. They need to drop the hammer. It won't happen, but they need to.
And I guess Connor Stalions never cooperated with the investigation, but there's going to be that Netflix series.
Isn't he going to have a Netflix documentary?
Not series, but the next. I'm even more curious now to see what comes out in that.
How is the NCAA not going to just sit back with a notepad and a pencil and just watch that Netflix documentary and come up with more stuff?
Yeah,
because he's just going to be blabbing his mouth, because he's an idiot. But whatever. It's appointment TV. I'll be watching it as soon as it comes out. If it's all
him, if the only point of view is him sitting there defending everything he did and whatever else, then obviously it's not going to be worth watching. But at least with all this coming out right now, I'm more interested now than ever in what's going to come out in that thing.
Right. Absolutely.
So I'll be watching. Okay, so I saw DK pose this question in the new Champions Lounge over the weekend. So DK said the group of 5 will get a team into the college football playoff regardless of its ranking. It's just the highest ranked group of 5 team that gets an automatic bid into the college football playoff. So DK asks, should there be a minimum ranking that the group of 5 should have in order to qualify for the playoffs? So what do you think about that, Ben?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, unless it's a season where there is no group of 5 team who's undefeated or, whatever the case may be. First of all, they have to be a conference champion. That's a prerequisite for them to get in. That's already there. They have always overly inflated the ranking of a group of 5 team. They always have, and they always will. And so I don't think there should be a minimum, because if there's a minimum, the college football playoff committee will just put them wherever that minimum needs to be. So I don't think that really solves anything, because the rankings are done by the people that run the college football playoff. So they're going to rank it.
So you can basically make it, all you got to do is say, well, they're the number 12 team.
Because did we really think that Liberty should have been ranked as high as they were last year? I mean, realistically, should they have been whatever they ended up? Weren't they in the low teens, I think, when it was all said and done? Did we really think that they were going to beat teams that were ranked in the 20s, for example, with 3 losses that play a Power 5 schedule? No, that's unrealistic. But that's where they were ranked to make sure that it made sense when they made it to the playoff.
Well,
New Year's 6.
Right. All that, absolutely right. The key for these next couple years of the playoff to expand to 12 as early as they did, because remember the original contract, they were still supposed to be playing the 4-year playoff this year. In order to change the format before the contract came up, you had to get unanimous approval by everyone in the FBS, each of the FBS conferences. So you were not going to get the group of 5 conferences to ratify the change to the playoff. You were not going to get them to vote yes to change it if you're going to leave the group of 5 out. Right. So that's part of it as well.
That's true. Good point.
You basically had to appease the masses by throwing them a bone and giving them a path to the playoff. And I mean, I get what DK is saying.
And so do I. You don't want to have a patsy in there for no reason.
But odds are, just like you were saying, whether it's Liberty or UCF or, Boise State back in the day, whoever it happens to be, you're going to have one of those teams who's going to have like one loss or no losses. And it's like, what does it hurt basically to make them the 12 seed or the 14 seed, depending on what format you're playing in? Right.
So DK says Liberty was 23. I looked it up. They're 100% were number 23. SMU was 24. Kansas State was 25. On a neutral field, are you taking Liberty or Kansas State?
Oh, Kansas State.
In a heartbeat.
Right.
In an absolute heartbeat. Yet they were ranked 2 slots ahead. They're going to rank teams the way they want them to be. And remember the debate last year was, and Sloppy Joe reminded me of this, was it SMU or Liberty? Who should be ranked higher? Well, Liberty was undefeated, and I believe SMU had a loss. SMU was the better team. If you pitted them up on a neutral field, SMU wins that game every time. But because they were undefeated, they got that little nudge, and they got to be 23 while SMU was 24. You know what I mean? So they're going to manipulate it however they need to manipulate it to make it come out the way they want it to come out.
Yes. And, look, you're essentially, I realize, there's probably a case for everyone gets a trophy, everyone gets a ribbon or whatever, but you're essentially, you're throwing a bone. Like, these are also FBS conferences. So is their main purpose just to come in, play against each other, get some big paychecks for going in and being the whipping boy to, some of the Power 5 teams, or should they at least have, should one team, because that's all you're given is one spot.
Yeah.
You're given one spot out of all of these group of 5 programs. All you're doing is giving them entry into the tournament. It's really not that much different than, 13, 14, 15 seeds in the NCAA basketball tournament.
Exactly.
You're
and the automatic bids.
You're giving entry to everybody.
And look, if you want to put yourselves in the shoes of like a group of 5 team, it gives them something to shoot for, right? And if you're a Liberty, or if you're let's say a Ball State or somebody like that has a really good season, and you've got an opportunity to be a higher ranked group of 5 team, that the money that they would get being in the playoff is more money than they would have ever seen in multiple years of playing group of 5 football. You know what I mean? And so that's something to shoot for. And the experience of being a part of it, and all of those different things. It's a carrot. It's a carrot for those teams. And I honestly, I do not have a problem with it, especially since I follow Notre Dame, and the best they can do is number 5. They're going to be playing that team a lot if they end up in that number 5 hole, right? And so, it's an automatic win pretty much. So I'm okay with that part too.
Yep. So I know you've been watching the Olympics. I've been watching the Olympics. 100-meter final yesterday, the men's 100-meter final.
I missed it live, but how could you have missed everything that has come after it?
Oh my gosh.
Holy cow.
Lee Diffie calling the Olympic track and field action for NBC. I was originally going to play the audio.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it because I don't want
get demonetized.
I don't want to, because I've even just played audio before, not the video, and we've gotten flagged, and I don't want to go through that whole thing. So the bottom line is, it's neck and neck coming down to the wire. You've got 4 guys within, hundreds of a second of each other as they come to the finish line. And the Jamaican, Diffie thought that the Jamaican had won. And he's like, and Jamaica wins the gold medal, and, the whole thing. And he goes nuts. And then the next thing everyone's standing around, and it turns like, well, a little bit of a problem here, because it's actually Noah Lyles, the American
that won,
who got the gold medal. And again, this thing was so close. Like, I have a hard time seeing how anyone sitting in that spot like Diffie could pull a Vince DiDario and declaratively.
Hold on a second. Why are you throwing me under the bus like that? Look, you can be excited.
What did you think? What did you think of his the way NBC handled it? Because even beyond just the actual call by Diffie, I thought there were a lot of other things that went wrong, like afterwards in sort of the there was a lot of chaos and confusion
Yeah.
created by NBC's broadcast, I think.
Well, look, you can be excited about a race and not declare a winner. You know what I mean? If it's not clear and obvious, you should wait for it to flash up on the scoreboard that you have available to you, not to mention the fact that if you watched any swimming or anything like that, like Rowdy Gaines had like the splits and like all of these different things at, his disposal. So we know that these commentators have information at their disposal that we don't have. And so if it doesn't come up automatically as the winner that you think is the winner, shut your mouth. Be excited about the race.
Right.
And be like, oh my gosh, it was too close to call. We're going to have to wait and it's a photo finish. Like you can be excited without declaring a winner.
It seems like that was the natural, like what should have, again, like it happens in the moment, whatever. And he's done a million of these things. So he's more experienced. But it just feels like when it's literally you've got 4 guys lined up that close with like feet and arms and heads and leaning and everything else. It's like it's just going to be too close to call. Like that seems like that would have been the natural thing to say.
Like watch a Cars movie, like the first Cars movie. That's how you call it. How you call a game. Okay.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'll believe you.
Well, because you don't have kids that are the same age as mine, but there was a tie at the beginning of the very first race, which is the whole point of the plot. 3 cars tied, and so they end up doing a race to play it off, right? With just the 3 cars. A little weird, but whatever. Bob Costas is the announcer for that, and he's like, oh my gosh, it's too close to call. We'll have to go to a photo finish.
There you go.
That's how you call a close race.
Right.
Like, come on, man.
Because then the other part of this whole thing is like they literally were like milling around for minutes. There was like silence before they finally were like, Noah Lyles is, like they never showed, the board inside, the stadium that showed the leaders. They never put a graphic on the screen after literally, hanging out for minutes and showing Lyles celebrate and run around and do his whole thing. They never put the final standings up on the screen to show us exactly who placed where because, oh, by the way, they barely mention the other American who took bronze. They barely even mentioned that. And literally it was like a couple hundredths of a second that separated,
thousandth of a second was at what it ended up being. Because I think to the second decimal place, which is hundredths, they were the same. And then they had to go to 5 thousandths of a second to figure out first to second. You know what I mean? So like they were, why? Yeah, good point. Swing the camera, look at the scoreboard and just stay there. Just stay on the scoreboard while you wait for it to be
Give us the
posted.
visual, your TV. It shouldn't be that hard. And again, even not doing that, again, they never put the graphic up on the screen before they finally cut away. You would and like I sent you a tweet, the BBC's broadcast of the whole thing.
Theirs was awesome, by the way.
Yeah, they had like so much information they were showing that NBC never even thought about touching.
Michael Johnson was geeking out at all of like the visual, stuff that they had to show you. Like they showed, who was ahead at the 30-meter mark, who was ahead at the 50-meter mark, like all of these different things and then how fast they were going. And I mean, it was like almost information overload, to be honest with you. But in comparison, it was so much better than the NBC version. So much better.
And, I think Otto Bolton, the guy who does the color on NBC, he's fine. But I do find it ironic that you've got an Australian and Bolton. I can't remember exactly where Bolton is from. He's obviously from one of the, Caribbean islands, never ran for the U.S. Like, they're the guys who are doing the broadcast on NBC, while Michael Johnson, one of the greatest male track performers in U.S. history,
BBC,
is doing BBC broadcasts. How is that?
Sense.
How is that happening?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
I don't get it.
Yeah, you got me on that one. I've got no explanation. For that, I've got no explanation for that. They just need to bring back like Tom Hammond and just let him do it. I don't even know if I'm good. Is Tom Hammond still alive? I don't even know if I should.
I believe he is.
Okay, good. Bring him back. It's only 2 weeks. It's actually track and field's only a week. Bring him back. He was good.
everyone's very excited about NBC doing doing the NBA and Notre Dame football now at this point. But you're going to get Dan Hicks straight from the pool in Paris to doing Notre Dame games this fall. I think he's going to be really
I think
good.
Dan Hicks is going to be awesome doing Notre Dame games.
I know.
I like Dan Hicks actually as an announcer in general.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think he does a fantastic. Him and Rowdy Gaines are amazing doing swimming. Like if you can't sit down and watch a close swimming race and not get excited with those two guys doing the call, then you don't have a passionate bone in your body.
Yeah. But then NBC needs to find that and how whatever that booth translates to the track and field booth.
Right.
I think they need to figure that out.
Many more days.
They've got 4 years to figure that out. But Jesse, I was talking to Jesse this weekend, and he's like, seeing Dan Hicks calling this swimming and knowing that that's what Notre Dame is going to have doing football games this fall. That's pretty exciting.
Really. I just want to give, we've got about a month. Just have Rowdy Gaines move into my house. I'll teach him all he needs to know about football. Get him as the color guy.
Just let Rowdy Gaines do Notre Dame football.
They could be in great shape. I think they should just do it. I'll teach him everything he needs to know.
That would be awesome. Riley Leonard, he gets it done. He gets it done.
I think it'd be great. People may poo-poo the idea, but I think he'd be great.
I think that you could do a lot worse than that. You're right.
And they have. NBC has done a lot worse.
Yeah. We just talked about it, actually. That's very, very true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Thanks for being here. We've got a lot to go. Fall camp rolls on this week. And, like Vince said, we're not supposed to say exactly when we're going to be out there and all that stuff, but we'll have some more camp availabilities this week, and we'll be here to talk about it, whether it's on this show or Brian's show, or we'll have We In, We Out later this week as well. So a lot of stuff to come this week on both IB Nation Sports Talk as well as the big show earlier in the day. We'll have some more comments from coaches and stuff like that on tomorrow's show. We got to talk to Dylan McCullough last week, and I didn't even get to play any Dylan today. Nice. So looking forward to that coming up this week too. All right, Vince, I will talk to you later. Everybody else, appreciate you again for being here. Hit that like button, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. And we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.